This is Infants on Thrones.
Listener's Essay.
Wherein Sister Smith goes to Priesthood Session, and what comes next. Sister Smith was a missionary and had been for 18 months. She was a diligent missionary, working hard for the Lord. Early on in her mission, being certain she would want to stay past her scheduled release date, she expressed her desire to extend her mission to her mission president. Seeing her good works, he agreed to pass the request on to his superiors. The request was granted. If it hadn't been, this story would likely never have taken place. Sister Smith was serving half a world away from her home in Utah, in a foreign land where English was seldom spoken. She loved the country in which she was serving. She loved the people. She loved the language, finally. The language had been difficult at first, but Sister Smith was not one to give up easily. She learned the language well enough that the natives often commented on her fluency. In April 1998, she was in her final area, her final transfer, her final spring in a country she loved so much. It was only fitting that her zone was given a special opportunity. Her zone was allowed to go to a neighboring zone where General Conference would be broadcast nearly live. The time difference made it necessary to attend the sessions late into the evening, so the priesthood session was to be broadcast on a tape delay on Sunday morning. The sessions were also not going to be broadcast in the native language, creating a necessity for the missionaries to translate the talks for the members who did not speak English. Since the MTC, Sister Smith had not seen General Conference live. Although she had been in large branches, even wards, it was not common to have a live broadcast. It was 1998 after all. Sister Smith didn't even have email access. She had just recently received approval to send letters by fax, but only if she knew a member or investigator who could send them for her. Also, General Conference was special to Sister Smith. She sincerely believed revelation would come at a General Conference if it were to come anywhere. She was also certain the first rumblings of revelation would come in Priesthood Session, a meeting she had never attended in person, but always combed the talks in the conference report ensign when it was issued a month later. It was a compulsion she had acquired since she left home for college several years earlier. Her family always listened to conference when she was growing up, but she did not listen closely, figuring if anything interesting happened, it would be talked about in church sometime. Not anymore. It was extremely important for her to hear the words coming out of the prophet's mouth, for that is how God spoke to her, she was certain. She didn't doubt the church was true, or that the Book of Mormon was the Word of God, or even that Joseph Smith was the prophet of the Restoration, although God had never actually spoken the words to her. But surely, after 18 months of diligent service, God would speak during this special conference. Saturday morning, Sister Smith and her companion, along with the rest of her district of missionaries, traveled hours on the train to the city where the conference would be broadcast. Several members of the branch in which she was serving also took the trip. They were to stay in other members' homes, while the missionaries roomed with their counterparts. Upon arrival, excited to begin the experience, the missionaries hurried to the church to set up. Several rooms were connected to the cable for the broadcast, so both of the televisions belonging to the church were to be utilized. That gave the members 2 rooms, therefore more space to stretch out during the 10-hour conference. It also made it necessary for the missionaries to split up into 2 groups of translators. In the female companionships, the junior companions had very little time in country, so they were not asked to translate. The elders assumed the senior females would not want to translate, but they did not count on Sister Smith's determination. She said she would take her turn and would translate, just as the elders did. So it was decided Sister Smith would translate in her turn in the Relief Society room. Each missionary would translate 1 talk in its entirety during their turn. That Saturday, Sister Smith was called on to translate once during the morning and evening sessions. The priesthood session was broadcast the next day, due to the tape delay. Sister Smith was in her seat promptly. No one told her she should not be there. In fact, she felt that she was a missionary, and many of the talks in priesthood session were geared toward the young men proclaiming the gospel, so why should she not be there, as she was also proclaiming the gospel? Her reasoning had not been well received in the MTC, although she was not as willing to rock the boat so early in her mission. Now she was practically finished, a veteran. She had been through the trenches and just knew God would reward her with revelation this time, if she was just there to receive it. So she sat through the first several talks given by apostles. They said good things she felt were relevant to her despite them being geared toward men. Then it was her turn to translate. To her surprise, her turn fell on the last talk of the session, given by the prophet himself, Gordon B. Hinckley. She felt honored, but also felt a great weight of responsibility, for she must be certain to translate his words just right. She was sure God would not fail her. She stood before the audience of faithful Mormons in that distant land, translating a talk given to men about their future wives. It was perfect. The prophet giving direction on how to treat a woman out of the mouth of a woman. He spoke of equality in a marriage, of respecting wives, of allowing them to be individuals. She felt that he was actually speaking to her about her future husband. Then it happened. He said, "But the time will come when you will fall in love. It will occupy all of your thoughts and be the stuff of which your dreams are made." And she heard, or felt, in her head, as she spoke the words, "When you hear these words again, you will know he is the one." It startled her, but she kept going. As she finished translating, she felt she had the revelation she was hoping to receive. In the next weeks, as her mission drew to a close, so many things had to be done, so many preparations had to be made, that she forgot her revelation. She returned home despondent, sad she had to leave a place she loved so much. But in the months that followed her return, life went back to normal. The mission was simply a happy memory. She started dating. A lot. No one extremely seriously, but she had only been home a couple of months. She got a job with a telephone operator company. They hired foreign language speakers, and her language was in demand. After only a few weeks working there, a very cute 20-something guy started. She happened to be chosen to show him the ropes, and after a few days of flirting, they started dating. She quickly learned how much they had in common. Their dates weren't often elaborate, although their first kiss was after the Howard Jones concert at Sundance, which was super awesome, both the kiss and the concert. Within a few weeks, they were inseparable. It was one evening, while she was hanging out at his apartment, that he said the fateful words, "The time will come when you fall in love. It will occupy all of your thoughts and be the stuff of which your dreams are made." The context has been lost in the intervening years, but the meaning was utterly clear. He was the guy. He was her equal. He was the one she would trust, and he her, just as President Hinckley had said. Nearly 16 years later, she has never questioned he was the one. Even when they left their earlier faith behind, they left hand in hand. Her certainties have changed. She has often wondered if she hadn't insisted on translating during that priesthood session, or if she had been barred from the session. Would she have been so certain of him? Perhaps. Perhaps not. It remains she fully believed in the church and God, and she fully believed God would give her revelation. In her paradigm, God did not punish her for being someplace she should not be. God rewarded her with revelation because she had righteous desires no matter her gender, and that is all anyone who is asking wants.
Can you still hear me?
I can. Tom?
Okay, good.
Hey, your voice is coming through good.
Yay!
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what was wrong with it, but I fiddled with it and it worked.
That's what we're doing. That's all we do here is just
Yeah, that's what we do with our TVs too. You bang on them
right.
until they work.
Right.
Right, exactly.
And children.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what you do. You just keep banging on them, and eventually they'll work.
right, but not Nintendo games. You blow on those.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, it's great to meet you. Is Smith your maiden name, or is that just a pseudonym?
Which would you like it to be?
Oh.
Maiden name.
Haven't I met you, Laura, before?
Yes, you
Yeah,
have,
'cause
in fact.
back in the Mormon expression days, right?
Yep, I was on your Sister Missionary panel.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, is this the same Laura? Because I was hoping it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
no, for reals. You made a good impression when I first
Oh,
talked to you.
thanks. I was in a much
great.
different place then. So,
Than you are now?
sure.
So what do you mean by that? Like you were still kind of
Oh,
processing stuff? Or
I
what?
was still going to church then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been like 5 years, hasn't it? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it was 09, 010, somewhere in there.
Oh,
Yeah.
10? Yep.
How do you call it? Yeah, 10.
Yeah, it's weird though because you have 09 and then you can't just call
I
it
still
10.
I still say 014 on accident before people laugh. So yeah.
So,
But yeah, it's been a really long time. And we did actually meet in person once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I met your husband, and I think I introduced you to my wife.
Yes, you did.
Awesome.
So, speaking of then and now, gosh, that seems like such a stage segue. But anyway, well, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the arc of your history with the church? I guess. I mean, we know the mission portion of it from the essay, but
well, I guess I would say, Laura, what drew the inspiration for the essay? I mean, obviously, it sounds like the mission was very vital and very integral and a very pivotal moment in your life, right? Because that's what you focused on. So, elaborate. Why was that what you wanted to go with?
Well, I think the mission still is kind of the central point in my Mormon experience. So, in processing on your way out, you have to go back through the experiences that you had, spiritual and otherwise, and integrate them into your life now.
So kind of reinterpreting them almost,
right, exactly. Yeah. Well, they're still a part of your life, so they're really still important to what you have become. So, going back through my mission experiences, I had, spiritual experiences like that one. And I have to go through and say, okay, well, what was that? What is it to me now? How can I make that into something good in my life still? And that one I think is really important because it had to do with my husband. And I really love my husband, and I still, I can tell my kids about that story, and they're not especially religious anymore. And so, there's kind of like, yeah, Mom, whatever, that's kind of silly. But still, it has meaning to me. Whether or not I believe that, there's some kind of, spiritual revelation to it or whatever. Or I just thought my husband was really super awesome, and he happened to hear the same talk that I did. I don't know.
But it seems like the supernatural aspect of it is kind of integral to the whole thing, though. I mean, it's this thing where, it's this distant memory that you've stored away for all these years, and then he happens to quote the exact same thing. And granted, it was given, granted it was a conference talk, and he was Mormon, so he probably heard it. But the fact that he said it in that same way, I mean, is that something that's hard to reinterpret for you, or is that been a struggle?
Somewhat. I think more at first than now. To me now, thinking about it, it kind of comes back to me as, psychologically, it's something that both of us experienced at pretty much the same time, right? Same time period, it was the same conference. We were probably watching it at pretty close to the same time. And it was kind of about, your future mate, So as we're both dating, we're both at the point where we're saying, well, I really like this person. And I think it might have just been something that he remembered and just said it. Right. And whether or not it was supernatural, I don't think it would be supernatural. Now that I think back on it, I don't think it's supernatural. It was a coincidence for sure. And coincidences aren't necessarily supernatural. But framing it in my Mormon framework, it was supernatural, and it was, this huge revelation to me.
And was it kind of a sticking point as you transitioned away from Mormonism? I mean, you said that you in the essay you said you and your husband did that together, right, at the same time. Yep. Is that correct?
Yep, we did together. So we're both pretty much atheistic agnostics now. So yeah, it was kind of a sticking point at the very beginning. As you're transitioning away, you're trying to reframe everything, trying to figure out what you still believe and what you don't believe anymore. And at the very beginning, both of us were kind of holding on to the religious idea of Jesus and, the afterlife and how, things that you can't explain still happen.
Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that.
And now that we're on the other side of it, we frame it differently. Mm-hmm. But at the very beginning, it was something that I had to say, okay, well, how does this actually still fit into my life? Does it continue to give me faith in the Mormon version of things? Do I still believe that God gave this to me? Where can I put this now? But now it's not so much of a conundrum as it was before, because we've reframed a lot of things, and the spiritual experiences no longer seem so spiritual anymore. There are explanations outside of the spiritual realm for my husband and I, at least.
Right.
So
would you say that? Sorry, would you say that both you and your husband pretty much went along the same path at the same speed, at the same pace?
Not exactly. Going back to during that time period, he continued to believe a lot longer than I did. I quit believing, probably a year before he quit believing, and it was kind of my fault, sort of. I was I was on the NOM board a lot, and I started listening to Mormon Expression before he did, and kind of got into the more liberal Mormon side before he did, and I didn't exactly bring him along with me, maybe like I should have. So, and he might have come along faster had I done that. But I was really worried that he would not want to follow along with me. So I just kind of left him out for a little while, and I feel bad about that. I should have been forthcoming with him and said, "Look, I don't believe in this anymore, and maybe we should figure this out together." But I thought that he was much more conservative Mormon than he really was.
That is strange, because that happens a lot, where spouses who in every other aspect of life, are very open with each other and talk about and are very aware of their respective views on things, but a lot of times they can kind of trick each other in terms of their relationship to Mormonism, because they're like, everyone's trying to put on this face of like everything's fine and I'm just I'm hardcore, but everybody kind of secretly has these doubts or questions, or isn't really as correlated as the vibe they give off. I don't know.
Well, sure, yeah, I totally understand that, but I think that's part of the problem. You know what I mean? Because you can go to church and think exactly what everybody else believes, and you keep this face on that says, I am just like you, and I believe just like you do, and I'm in your in crowd, and you don't want anybody to know that you're not in their crowd, and everybody's doing it, but you never talk about it. So I had a couple of friends when I was still trying to believe that I was open-ish with, and them knowing that I was having a hard time actually seemed harder on them than it probably should have been. They really wanted to keep me in. And that's probably why I was less forthcoming with my husband, because I really, really like him, and I didn't want him to think less of me.
Right.
So I kept it to myself for a really long time, and I didn't want to hurt him. And so
right, yeah.
That's what it was. I just didn't want to make him feel bad. I didn't want to make him think that, I was not going to be with him forever. And
yeah, I mean, the stakes are crazy high, so it's
yeah.
You kind of try and tiptoe around that type of thing. Yeah.
Right. And from the flip side, I kept my wife pretty much lock and step with my progress out. And so in a lot of ways, just listening to the way you handled the relationship with your husband, I kind of wish that I would have done that. Like, kept her in the dark just a little bit, because I remember like constantly berating her with information and what I was learning and where I was at and stuff like that. And at some certain points of the journey, she would say, you don't have to always push me in this way. You don't always have to tell me every little thing. If I found something that was very impactful to me spiritually or intellectually, I would share it with her, and she's like, one, she didn't really have an interest in it. Two, I really did feel at some point like I was grabbing her by the feet, kicking and screaming, like, you're coming with me. And I wasn't respecting her boundary of her own journey. And it wasn't until I started to ease off and say, okay, you know what? You're still going to stay in the church. You're still going to believe. And I'm here if you want to talk about this stuff. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them as well. And that's when sort of our relationship started to get better instead of worse. So
yeah, and for me, it wasn't as soon as he found out that I was questioning, but it was soon after. He felt bad when he found out, because he found out kind of in a not great way. I actually left New Order Mormon up with my my name and everything on it, and he went back through just without me knowing, because I had left it up. It was my own fault. Right. He went back through my posts and was like, oh, I had no idea you believed this. I had no idea you were feeling this way. Why didn't you tell me? And, it was a good probably week that we were kind of back and forth, I can't believe you did this to me. I can't believe this and whatever. And then after he started asking questions and I started, giving him the historical answers and whatever, it was actually, let's see, in church probably a week later. There's a long backstory. Like, everybody knew that I was not exactly correlated, and I was kind of a problem in church. So, I would say things that people didn't appreciate. So,
like what? Give us an example.
Yeah, right.
I'm curious. Like you'd go in there and say, yeah, this is a bunch of crap, and then kind of walk out, drop the mic.
Right.
Or, I mean, what? Oh, no, the little search bar just popped up.
Yep.
Sorry
like
about that.
No, not
sure
a problem.
What happened.
No, not a problem.
Okay.
So give us an example of of you saying stuff that people didn't like. Was it just
okay?
Yeah.
This is the best example that I can think of right off the top of my head. But I was in Relief Society, and they were talking something about who was going to be in spirit prison or whatever. And I always found it ridiculous that only people that are baptized, whatever, are going to be like in paradise part or
right.
whatever it is. So I spoke up and I was like, doesn't it seem crazy that, the good people that lived on the earth are not going to be there and the jerks that were baptized can be there? Doesn't that seem weird to anybody else? And the teacher's like, well, I don't know. What does everybody else think? Do you think that, the good people are going to be in paradise or whatever? And, half of the room raised their hand to agree with me that seems crazy that good people won't be there, but, not good baptized people would be there. And she got all flustered and upset and whatever. So the next week, she comes back to do another lesson. And before she even starts, she says, I'm not going to take any comments about this, but here's the answer to the discussion that we were having last week. And she reads, I think, a talk by Bednar all about who was going to be there in paradise and why only baptized people were there and whatever, and wouldn't take any discussion. So she was really frustrated that anyone would listen to what I was saying, whatever. So anyway, there was that, but there were several others, and I was always on the back row, just kind of scowling and not enjoying myself. I didn't enjoy going to church at all, and I'm not completely sure, but I have a pretty good idea that the bishop decided to make a special class for. It seemed like it was just for me. So it was Gospel Essentials. Pretty much for me. And he called my best friend and her husband to be the teacher. And my mother-in-law came because she would just go to the class with my husband and I. And my husband came, and then like the bishop's wife was there, and my visiting teachers were there. It just seemed very strange. This particular class was made up of these particular people, knowing that I would probably go to that one because my friend and her husband were the teachers, and so we would get into all kinds of stuff, and they would try to set me straight. There was one time I went off about Heavenly Mother, and they would always just have my best friend do like this testimony at the end. It's just all about Jesus. Whatever, you don't have to believe everything. It's just all about Jesus. So.
Yeah, that's weird. That sounds like an Agatha Christie novel. Like you bring in all these people, and they're like, there's a sinister connection with all of them.
Right.
I'm just picturing a PEC meeting with the Eastside president, the bishopric, whatever, and they're all just like, we've got to do something with Sister Smith. We've just got to do something about her. So what do we do? And then they make this plan. They
and there was another time in this same ward. It was before this happened, when we very first moved into the ward. And, I was surly in my ward before that, whatever. But when we got there, my husband and I had a conversation about which Sunday school class we were going to go to. And they had a marriage and family relations class that had just started. And they announced it in sacrament meeting that there was this marriage and family relations class. And we both thought, oh, that's a great idea. That gets us out of gospel doctrine and gospel essentials. We can just go to this marriage class, right? Because we got a great marriage. It's awesome.
Me and my wife did the same thing.
Right. So we go to this class, and my mother-in-law, because she went to the classes with us, came to that class with us. And we went for probably 4 or 5 weeks, and nobody said anything to us. They didn't say you're not supposed to be here. They didn't say, anything about anything, contrary to us being there. So it was probably 4 or 5 weeks in that the instructor, who was a really great guy, he was like a marriage counselor in real life and whatever, but he gives this quiz, right, about your marriage and what your roles are in the marriage. And I don't know the exact questions that are on it, but it's in the marriage and family relations book. And he just printed it off and gave it to everybody. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions was like a true or false question. Like, you believe that the husband should be the head of the family, or something along those lines, or the patriarch of the family, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I checked off false. And my mother-in-law looks over and she's like, false? You checked off false? And I was like, yeah, I checked off false. Jeff and I are, we're equals. He's not like the head of the family. I'm not the head of the family. We're both head of the family. It's ridiculous to think that the husband and wife, can't be equal heads of the family, And the teacher did not appreciate that. And so that same day, we went up and asked, can we get a manual, or is there some way we can download a manual? Because we hadn't received one. We were just going to the class. And, he looks at us kind of funny, and he's like, well, this class was kind of a calling for the rest of the couples in here. And, I had just enough books for them, and, you weren't really called to this class. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not sure if this is because I disagreed with your whatever patriarchy response, but it sure seems like we're being kicked out. So...
You answered that. You answered the feminism question improperly. So
right.
Out with you.
Right, exactly. And I said it loudly, and I probably shouldn't have said it as loud as I did.
I'm out of here. Who's coming with me?
Right. So after all this happens, and after I finally told my husband, well, after he found out about what I really believed, we went to church. It was probably the next week, that week after that. It could have been 2 weeks, not quite sure. But we were in... I think it was the gospel doctrine class, that they were talking about the milk stripping story.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So we had just been talking about that one on the New Order Mormon board. And so I nudged my husband and was like, hey, do you know the real story to this story? And so I told him as they're like telling the fake story. And I was like, yeah, this is totally fake. You can go online and find all this stuff about it. And you just go ahead and do it. And he did it afterward. He went and looked it up, and he's like, I can't believe they have been lying about this the whole time. I can't believe I've been listening to that story every year and just realized that it was false.
Let's recap the bullet points of that story just for for listeners that maybe aren't familiar with it. I don't know if there are any, but
the basic bullet points. Let's see. Okay, so the real bullet points or the bullet points in the gospel doctrine class?
Well, yeah, I guess both, because in the gospel doctrine class, there's some arrangement between these two families, and they were sharing this cow, and one family was stripping off all the cream that they shouldn't have,
right?
And then eventually someone got offended, and that's why they left, because they were offended over the milk. And it's like, how could they throw away their salvation and their place in paradise, like we were talking about, their place in paradise after they die over milk?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's the fake story, but the real story.
Now, the rest of the story.
Yes. The real story. Let me see if I could remember the name of the guy.
It's Thomas Marsh.
Thomas Marsh.
Yes, Thomas Marsh. Okay. Yeah. Thomas Marsh. He was a leader in the church in Nauvoo. And the real story is he did have a cow, and he and his wife, did have the milk from that cow, and his wife did have an agreement with a neighbor about, they're going to make cheese, and you need a certain amount of cream and whatever in order to make it properly. But that really doesn't come into the real story. There was like something that happened with the stake president and these wives, but it didn't have anything to do with why Thomas Marsh left the church. The real story is Thomas Marsh this was during the Missouri War time, right? I think. Wasn't it the Missouri War? Where the Danites were going out and raiding the local communities. And then the local communities were also reciprocating, and everybody was doing bad stuff to everybody else. So Thomas Marsh was really, really upset that these Danites who were, ostensibly under Joseph Smith were doing all this stuff to the local people outside of the church. So he went up to, I believe it was Chicago, and did a deposition against the Danites, saying this is what they're doing. They shouldn't be doing this. And it was against the church as well, because the Danites were part of, the church structure right then. And so he came back, and all the Mormons found out what he had done, and he basically got, he had to leave in the middle of the night because they were going to come, do whatever to him. And so he left, and, everybody was against him, saying that, he was an apostate, or, whatever they were saying against him. Eventually he did end up back with the Mormons in Salt Lake, and Brigham Young made an example of him at conference, saying, how old he is and how he wants to come back. And if he had never left, he would be, all young looking like Brigham Young was. And
yeah, it was a shameful humiliation.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible.
I'm just saying, it's like all fun and games, and then you wake up in bed next to a 40-year-old freshman.
19, so...
19 minutes late to Pinochle? Where you're meeting your old friends in the park?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh my gosh, Maya, look at him. He's still so sharp. That's so inspiring. Tell us about the war. Any one of them.
But he eventually did, come back. I'm not sure why, but he was really old. His wife had died. I don't know the whole story as to why he came back, but he was in the crowd with William Law and, the guys that apostatized during that period of time. Mm. So, but they use him as this example. And I believe it was it George Q. Cannon is the one who started using that milk stripping story to say that that's why he left. But it wasn't. He didn't leave the milk thing at all.
Yeah, and I'm looking online here, and it says President Hinckley and lots of other apostles and general authorities have used this story, and it's been published in official LDS publications multiple times. So
exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. In fact, I think they just barely used it maybe last conference or the conference before that. again.
Yeah, that's something that should have stopped a long time ago.
Right.
Right.
A long time ago.
It's in the
Right,
bloodstream
exactly.
now. Yeah.
Well, you can look online and find the legal documents as to what he said, during his deposition, and you can see that there's nothing in the legal record about this milk strippings thing. That was purely a stake president thing, and it didn't have anything to do with why he left in reality.
Right.
So, but that would be embarrassing, for the church, right? To say he left because of the Danites, because they don't really officially.
Yeah,
well,
why make any story of it at all? I mean, just ignore them. Like that's
because it fits a narrative that he got offended, and so they can use that. The milk stripping is saying, don't be like him and get offended.
Right. Exactly. And in that same one, don't they use Simon's writer because they spelled his name wrong on?
Oh yeah, that's in the same. Right.
Yeah.
Because they use them as an example, like don't be petty and get offended like these guys. There's plenty of examples of people getting offended and letting their eternal salvation go of the way of milk strippings or a misspelled name, which is so insulting to their reputation and their memories,
Right, right.
Yeah, well, the church has to make sure that everybody that leaves looks bad, right? So
more or less,
yeah.
Yeah, you can't have any happy apostates.
Well, you seem pretty happy.
Oh, I'm always happy.
So one thing, I think that one of the other themes that I picked up from the essay, one of them was reconciling these spiritual experiences, especially when, if something that continues after Mormonism was built around the construct of Mormonism, how do you reconcile that type of thing? But another one of the themes that I thought was interesting, I'd like to dig into a little bit more is that very special brand of sexism that surrounds, first of all, the conference and the Priesthood Session, and second, Sister Missionaries. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I guess you already talked to Tom a little bit about, being on the Sister Missionary panel, but was that, how do you reconcile the feminist streak in you with this construct that systematically devalues women? Like, especially specifically as a Sister Missionary. Sorry, that's a really long question. Does that make sense, though?
I would have hung up if you had asked me that question.
Yeah. Yeah, we're cutting that. I'm gonna cut the shit out of this recording.
Sorry.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
I'm blaming Cox Communications.
I would. I just mentioned to Jake that your husband's probably streaming Netflix or something. I don't know.
No, actually, I think it's my kids on Minecraft.
Oh well, that's even worse.
Minecraft. Minecraft is a wonderful game.
Terrible thing.
No, it actually is.
I love it.
I love Minecraft.
It's digital heroin for kids.
Right.
Is what it is.
I know, right? They're on it all the time, and they're always fighting about who gets to be on the computer that'll do it best. So
my son, he'll come over. He's like, "Dad, you should see this thing that I just built." And I'm looking at him like, I don't get why you guys like that.
Right,
that's
cool. Exactly. Yeah.
It's as video games go, though, it's pretty. There are a lot worse video games out there. It fosters creativity. They build things and they don't.
Sounds like you're getting defensive, Jake. You can still play Minecraft. We don't judge.
I'm playing it right now. Actually, that's why our call keeps.
Every time Laura drops, he cues it back up.
Right.
Right. He's like, "Oh yeah, I got 5 minutes. Let's go."
Right.
Yeah, working on my tower. So sorry about that. All right, the mission. Yes, it was very patriarchal, but I didn't know how patriarchal the church really was. Because growing up, I had no idea. My parents were really supportive. My dad was always like, yeah, whatever you want to do, you can do that. Be whatever you want to be. You're awesome. And I never...
So you never
really
had different, weird double standards. In my family, Sunday afternoons, the boys were allowed to change, dress down into shorts and t-shirts and run around. But the girls of the family had to stay in dresses all day.
No.
Is that true?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. I can't even imagine. No, my family wasn't like that at all. And, it would have gone well in my house. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and had my parents been like, yeah, your brother can dress down, but you guys can't, that wouldn't have flown in my house. Not at all.
Yeah.
But, they weren't overly feminist. They just treated their kids equally. It wasn't anything weird. And I guess in Young Women's, you get the licked cupcake things, and you start to see how the boys get to go to scout camp and whatever. But in my house, it wasn't like that. All the girls knew how to do stuff. My dad taught us how to, change electrical stuff and how to work on cars and, do all the stuff that everybody else can do. I knew how to change a tire. I knew how to do everything my brother could do. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, this is the problem. See, you weren't raised, thinking that you were below men. See, you were raised in an equal opportunity household. And so when you get plugged into the church where you're like, why is everybody acting like women should be lesser than men?
It is anchor man, not anchor lady, and that is a scientific fact.
This doesn't jive with your upbringing or the way that, you looked at the world now. And I was just talking to Jake at that last drop, and I said, if I was on my mission and there was a sister missionary that come into the priesthood session and started to translate, I seriously would be egging my companion, like, what is she doing here? We're talking about this is some sort of a exclusive boys only club.
Right.
And I'm so embarrassed to think about it like that now. I'm like, why was it like that? Or why is it like that now? And I'm just not in it anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just such a weird it's such a weird artifact of institutionalized sexism where it's like there's this one special meeting that in reality is exactly like all of the other meetings. But all we're going to do is prohibit one gender from going.
Right?
The exact same talks. There's nothing different.
Well, you get a lot more porn talk, right?
I guess you get a little more porn talk, but
yeah, let's not forget the little factories talk.
Too sexy for wickedness. Too sexy for wickedness. It never was happiness.
Right.
Oh, right.
See, I never heard that one, and I didn't know about it until when I was a missionary. We would get, I don't know if you guys did this, you would photocopy all the spiritual stories that other missionaries had.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was just us that did that.
Mission folklore, man. It's everywhere.
Days in copy stores making copies of everybody's spiritual stories. So I came home with huge binders full of these stupid stories. Anyway, the little factories talk was in one of those I had grabbed one of the elders' spiritual talk binder thing. And so I had photocopied that one and I read it and I was like, this is weird. I don't know. Little factory, I don't know, whatever. So I had read it, but I had no idea what it was talking about. I don't know.
So so it was weird because you didn't piece it together so this is guys and their junk and what happens to them at night.
I didn't piece that together at all.
Oh, really?
I was just like, this is a weird talk.
That talk
and then was I threw it away. Yeah, I don't care about this one. It doesn't pertain to me. I have no idea what they're talking about. So yeah, I read it, but I didn't know what it was talking about. So yeah, you guys got a lot more of that. But otherwise it was weird to me that I couldn't go to it. But I had never really, wanted to go. It wasn't something.
Go, yeah, it's 2 extra hours of conference. Who wants that?
Right. So, before I was a missionary, I didn't really care. I was like, yeah, priesthood session, whatever, another 2 hours. I don't really want to go to that. My dad never wanted to go to it. So, why would I want to go to it?
Your dad sounds cool.
My dad is awesome. My mom and dad are both awesome. They're the best people ever, just so you know.
No bias, but yeah.
Oh, I'm not biased at all. They're the best people. So, other than my husband is, leaps and bounds more awesome. He's awesome.
Wow, you've got great people all around.
I know.
I do. I'm fabulously lucky. But anyway, so I didn't care before my mission. And then when I got to be a missionary, I thought, well, priesthood session is kind of for people who are doing priesthood duties, and I'm a missionary, and I have the same calling as the elders, so why can't I be there? And this this was the first time in my mission that we were going to actually be able to be to a broadcast. So I didn't ever have the opportunity to go before that. So and nobody said anything was wrong about it. I had never had the idea that it was wrong for a woman to go to the priesthood session anyway. No one ever told me that. I just didn't want to go.
Did you ever try and go after your mission?
No, I didn't, because it was another meeting and it wasn't televised, and I didn't go to General Conference anyway. Even though I grew up near Salt Lake, I never actually went to General Conference to go to General Conference. I went maybe once with my friends just to go with my friends. But if it was televised, I might as well watch it on TV. And after watching, 4 hours on Saturday, I didn't really want to watch anymore. So it wasn't televised, so I just didn't care.
Right.
See, I think you're too level-headed and normal. Because I remember, I remember on my mission.
Jeez, Laura, come on.
I remember coming home from a priesthood session on my mission, and there were sister missionaries in our district that'd be like, "So what did they say? What did they say? Did they say anything important? Like, are we going to Missouri yet? No? Okay. I'm just making sure we didn't miss anything real important."
Yeah, there was some of that, but I figured if something really, really amazing happened, someone would say something about it, So if they didn't tell me immediately, it wasn't that important.
Yeah.
You know, it was the same thing with like state conference. I kind of wanted to go sometimes, but really it was just too much of a pain. And someone would tell me if we were going back to Missouri.
And every time I thought that same thing, like, state conference, I should probably go in case they say something important. And every time I would go, and I even spoke in state conference once, every time I would go, I'd be like, oh, this was so disappointing.
Right?
Why did I think that I was going to get anything important here?
Right.
Yeah.
But in your essay, you made it sound like this was this monumental event. Like you really expected that something would happen in priesthood session because you had gotten into the VIP lounge. Like you.
Yeah, it was kind of an irrational thing. Well, okay, my mission was really, really super important to me, right? So I thought irrationally that while I was on my mission, I was going to get all these answers to things that I'd been asking for ages and never got the answers to. So this was like my last hurrah, it was my last month. I wasn't going to be able to extend any further. And this is conference, my last month. I had like 3 weeks left. And, I was translating for the prophets. And so it was going to be something huge. And then when I got to be the one in priesthood session, when my turn rolled around in priesthood session, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is where it's going to be. So that's why, because I figured all this stuff was going to happen. It had to, because I was on my mission. I was super tuned in. I was, this was the time. And if it was going to happen, it had to happen now.
Yeah. The word special was in italics. Yeah.
It was.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And, I felt like, this is the reason why I extended. I knew this was going to happen in the back of my head, or God knew.
Oh, you extended too?
Oh, yeah, I totally extended. Like I said, the mission was really, really super important to me. So, and I think I talked about it in the missionary panel that we did, but I'll just go back a little bit and kind of explain. But my boyfriend, when I was 18, when he went on his mission, I was really, really mad that I couldn't go at the same time. And I thought it was super sexist. And I, really hated the fact that he was leaving me. So I made the decision that I was going to go when I was 21, regardless of whether or not he was back. I was just going to go, and I was going to show how spiritual I was. And I was going to be the best missionary ever. And it was going to be amazing. And then when I got my call to Italy, I was like, this is the place. I'm going to go there. I'm going to love it. I may or may not baptize a bunch of people because it is Italy. That I couldn't baptize them anyway because I'm a girl. So what do I care? But right. I'm going to extend. I'm going to show how awesome I am. And I'm going to show God that I'm the best missionary he's ever had. And I'm just going to show everybody. Which kind of
Sister Price.
I'll do something incredible that blows God's freaking mind.
Exactly. But, that's what I do. I if someone says I can't do something, then I do it, and I do it better than I think anybody else can. So that's what I was going to do. And that's why I extended. I told my mission president, I think it was the second month I was out there, I said, I'm going to extend. And he said, you think so? And I said, yeah, I'm going to extend. So.
Wow.
So, yeah. I love that.
I see that part of that was part of the reason that I was biased against Sister Missionaries while I was in the mission field, and I admit that when I was an elder, I was totally biased against Sister Missionaries, and always be diminutive about whatever they did or what they were doing. It's like, oh, the women, you're cackling around, blah blah. Like it was just this really bad mentality that they had. But part of it was because they had so much more drive and maturity and a sense of purpose out there that I didn't have, because when I was out there, I took my mission very seriously, but I treated it like it was a duty. Like, this is, I've been drafted into God's army and I got to do my time and then I'm gonna go home. Like this is a duty. That was the mentality that I was coming from. But Sister Missionaries who are doing this electively, they had a very different approach to it, and they took a lot. I don't know. They seemed to enjoy it more, and they were worried about excelling and not just surviving. And it was weird. I felt intimidated by it, so I would kind of push back against that by in my own little sexist way. So
I guess I'm glad that you weren't in my mission.
Yeah,
I had really great elders that I was with. I had very few problems with any of that. I mean, they might have talked behind my back, but we all had, a friendship among us. Because it was such a low baptizing mission, you kind of had to be friends with the rest of the missionaries because, you were going to be doing street contacting with them. You were going to be going to meetings with them all the time because really there's not much else to do. So if you're not friends with the elders, then it's just you and your companion all the time, and that gets pretty boring. So, I was friends with all the elders that I worked with, and there were, very, very few times where, I had the patriarchy slapped in my face.
Well, yeah, and most of my stuff was in my head. I wasn't like every time a girl, a sister missionary talked, I was like, "Shut up, make me a sandwich." Like I wasn't like that, in my head. But in my head, I kind of had that. I had that mentality. I had that kind of stink. So anyway,
yeah,
you grew out of that, right, Jake?
Yeah,
good job.
So when you said that you had it slapped in your face, what were some ways that happened for you? Dang it! Did we lose her again? Okay, so
I think it's because when Jake asks me a question, all of a sudden my internet stops.
That's what I just told him. I said, Jake, I'm thinking of hanging up every time he asks a question, just to let him know that question deserves some time and space.
Right,
we could all take a break.
For a minute.
Oh.
Right, exactly.
That was a good one. Oh.
So now I totally forgot what you asked.
Yeah.
What did you ask, Jake?
Well, I was wondering if, because you said earlier that there were a few experiences where you had that patriarchy, slap.
Oh yeah.
And maybe elaborate a little bit.
Well, let's see. There was one time, and I think I told this one, Tom, before, but there was one time when my zone leader. Well, we had done a bunch of street contacting, obviously. That's what we did. And I had contacted this dude. I mean, he was probably in his mid-20s, whatever. And I had given him a Book of Mormon and, the church times and everything. And he showed up to church and just wanted to be with me. And so, obviously, my companion and I couldn't teach this dude, right? So I went to the zone leader and said, "Hey, you got to help me out with this. You guys are going to have to take this guy if he's really serious." And, the zone leader was like, "Well, you got yourself into this. You got to tell him." And I was like, "All right, well, this guy is trying to hold my hand right here. And you guys got to come let him know." And he's like, "No, you got to tell him." And I was like, "Fine." fine, I'll tell him. And I was like, look, we're not going to go out together. I'm a nun, you know. And this guy got all
he's
mad.
Italian. He knows what that means.
Yeah, yeah. He got mad and stormed out or whatever. And I was like,
wait, the guy got mad?
Yeah, the guy got mad because he I guess thought that we were gonna be going out together. So
you, my girlfriend, you come home with me.
Well, okay, these are Italian men too. And while I love Italians, sometimes Italian men can be a little bit forward and expect things of their women. So I went to the zone leader afterward and I was like, look, you could have just come and said, we will be teaching you. And he wouldn't have got mad and stormed out, Maybe you could have helped me out just a little bit right there. And, he was like, well, you got to learn to stand up for yourself and fight your own battles and whatever. And I was, that kind of was frustrating. And honestly, he was the only one that I ever had trouble with. So the rest were great. They were never condescending toward us. They, didn't try to not work with us. They didn't avoid us. So,
well, that's good because I can't remember if I said this to you, Laura, or in the past. I don't remember. But on my mission, there was two particular sister missionaries that, how do I say this delicately? They wanted to be treated as equals, and so they pushed the mission president to become sister APs. Mm-hmm. And it was towards the end of my mission that the mission president finally kind of caved and gave in, and kind of gave them like these honorary titles as APs, and even gave them responsibilities and stuff like that. And there was a lot of rumblings in the mission, like, why is he turning the mission upside down by just caving into these power-hungry women and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it was, I hate thinking about it because of where my mind frame was. I actually think back to those two women as, very stalwart, very strong women that probably should have been honored for their decisions to try to kind of break the system. Instead, I'm on the side like, can you believe those women trying to act like they got priesthood or something? That's so stupid.
They were trying to take your power, right?
Right. Yeah, like they want to get in front and lead meetings. They don't even know how to do that.
right, exactly. Oh, I did think of a couple other patriarchy things, but these have to do with my mission president, who, again, he was an awesome guy as well. So, and
everybody around you.
No, I've been really, really lucky in my life, but he was a really great guy. But there were just a couple of things. First of all, we did have like a sisters meeting near the end of my mission, and one of the things that came up in the sisters meeting was he said that since we were in Italy, we had to look good. The sisters had to look good. So he told us to go out and buy new clothes and buy makeup, and so that we would look good. And he also gave us an extra half hour every morning so that we could go work out and lose those few extra pounds.
Wow.
So honestly, I didn't think of that as sexist because I really wanted that extra time to work out anyway, because I like to work out, and so I wanted that extra time, and I almost felt like it was a privilege for us to have the time that we can go out and jog while the elders have to stay in and do their studying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's crap because, we had to get up. If we wanted to work out or go to the gym or whatever, we'd have to get up earlier. It's like 5:30.
Right.
So, I would have loved that extra 30 minutes.
Yeah, so he gave us the extra a little bit. He also gave us a little bit extra money that month to go buy new clothes and buy makeup.
What?
Right?
Nice.
So,
some walking around money.
Yeah.
Huh?
I actually used it for clothes and makeup.
Nice.
So, and then there was one other time. See, so I didn't think of that necessarily as sexist. Now I do. Now I think, well, that was incredibly sexist for him to tell us that we looked bad. But,
Or there were some expectations, like, you have to look good. Elders, go around in your dingy shirts and shoes and everything. But sisters...
Now was he specific by saying, you ladies need to get to the gym or start running to lose the...
Yeah, he told us we had to work out a half an hour a day. He gave us that extra time. We didn't have to be out until like 9:30 instead of 9 o'clock. We had to be working out. Yeah.
See, I wish that was part of the word of wisdom, though. You know,
wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be nice if they put in the word of wisdom, just said, you know what, we're throwing out the coffee and tea thing. Nobody really understood why that was there anyway, and we're going to replace it with half-hour working out every day. Everybody, that's the rule.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That'd be awesome.
Well, it kind of backfired, though, because my companion and I would go running every morning after that, and there was this garbage man. He was a really nice guy, but he was the garbage man who would get the brioche for the rest of the garbage men. And, brioche, they're like, little pastries. And he would see us every morning, and he would always give us brioche. So we were out running for a half hour, but we were getting our pastries in return for free from the next garbage man.
Nice.
So
it's a wash.
Right. Well, no, because you save that money, buy some more better clothes.
Right?
So maybe
it was just extra breakfast.
Yeah.
Second breakfast.
What about second breakfast?
And then the one last story is about our bikes. I was in a bike area several times, and in this one particular bike area, the elders had brand new bikes, and the mission would pay for them. They bought these like brand new mountain bikes. And they stayed with the area. So they were always having trouble with their bikes getting stolen or whatever, because there were these really nice brand new bikes. And the sisters had really old, ugly girl bikes. They were not nice bikes.
With like tassels on it and like a basket?
Might as well have had. In fact, I was
Hello, Kitty Bell.
Right. I was in a threesome at the very first part of when I got to this area, and my bike was seriously held together with baling wire. I mean, seriously, I used the baling wire to put the pedals back on and wire it together so I could use it for the week that I was in this threesome. So we went to the mission president and said, look, we need these new bikes. Our bikes are falling apart. See, they're falling apart. Can we just go buy some new bikes? And could we make them the men's bikes because they're better quality than these stupid women's bikes? Plus, we have this great idea how we can attach our skirts to it so that our skirts won't constantly be flying up and everybody thinking we have these white biker shorts on. And the mission president, are you still there?
Oh, yeah. I'm
here.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just making sure.
Right.
So the mission president said, absolutely not. You have to get the girl bikes, and we're just going to have the office elders go get them for you. You can't go buy them yourself, even though the elders could go buy their own. They were authorized to go get their own. We had to have the office elders go get ours for us, and they had to be these girl bikes, even though there was no way to attach your skirt to it. And so we found that rather sexist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, but the mission president thought it was worse if we had to swing our legs over the seat instead of however you do it with a girl bike. You still swing your leg over the seat to get on a bike.
Because he knows,
Yeah.
He would understand.
Right, obviously.
Well, I mean, yeah. How would you not do that otherwise? I'm just trying to think like a situation where you can get on a bike, mount a bike without lifting one of your legs.
I don't know. I have no idea. And my companion had this really great idea. And we were going to be able to keep our skirts down, which would be so good for us because, honestly, we had people coming up to us on the street asking where we got those cool white biker shorts.
They're like, it's a bit of an investment. It's a very exclusive store.
Right.
If you got a year.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that was all the patriarchy I ran into on my mission, really, that I recognized at the time.
Right.
So otherwise, it was a great mission.
Right.
I had a great time. I didn't have, tons of really amazing spiritual experiences, but,
No, hang on. I got to stop you there. I mean, it seems like every mission, sister or elder, always has at least one or two like pivotal spiritual moments where, for their mission, they come home and, and they've got to share them in their homecoming talks or whatever. Like, and it wasn't until I met brother or sister so-and-so that that I knew, and then you stare everybody down with those eyes, saying, "I knew that this church was true." You had to have at least a few of those, right?
Well, sure. Yes and no. Let's see.
Well, how about this?
Okay.
Those spiritual experiences now, do they still have meaning to you now?
Yes and no, and I'll explain. So,
okay.
Like I said, I didn't have tons of really amazing spiritual experiences on my mission. The experiences that I felt like were really spiritual to me were, just pretty much being there and being with these people that I felt like, I was so close to because I'm supposed to be serving these people. So, I just felt like it was a spiritual experience to even be able to talk to them because I couldn't speak Italian before, and now I could speak Italian. And I didn't get a lot of opportunity to talk about church stuff because they just weren't that interested in that. They were more interested in, what do you do in the United States? What kind of life do you live? So I didn't have a lot of testimony bearing experiences. I saw 0 baptisms in my companionship. So, there weren't tons of those baptismal experiences either. There were a couple of people that I saw get baptized that I happened to have taught, so there was that. And they were really great people, but I didn't feel like I had these huge, amazing spiritual experiences that had to do with church stuff. They mostly had to do with the people there, that I just felt so close to them. So when after I got home from my mission, I wouldn't necessarily bear my testimony of how awesome the church was. I would bear my testimony of how awesome I thought people were. So, and how I felt like, God sent me to these people so I could learn more about them and about myself.
Oh no, Laura. Hurry, Jake, ask her a question.
Maybe it'll reverse.
Dang it.
I'm just such a cynical asshole.
Sorry.
Oh.
That's a quick turnaround.
That was quick.
I know. Cox is getting better. So, as I was saying, my testimony was not necessarily of the truthfulness of the church. It was of how amazing I thought the people were.
But see, I think that's really, really neat that you were able to do that because...
Well, it was hard, though, because I thought I was supposed to be the super amazing missionary. So there were times in my mission where I was like, okay, we haven't had a baptism at all ever, so we're going to go on this fast, and we're going to fast until we have someone, have a second discussion with us. And that fast would last 24 hours, and then we'd be like, well, I guess this isn't going to work, Mm-hmm. There was one time we did a water, bread, and carrot fast, and that lasted a week.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah, it wasn't a very healthy fast.
I was going to say, that must have wreaked havoc on your system.
Oh, it was
do you get like rickets or something?
No. I ended up okay, but we were supposed to be losing weight anyway, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah. Right.
But still, we couldn't figure out a way that we were going to make God do what we wanted to do. Because, a 24-hour fast, that's about as much as we physically could handle. And that wasn't going to work because it hadn't worked before. So we thought, well, we have to do a longer one, but we can't not eat. So, if we have a couple things, we'll have a vegetable, we'll have fruit, and we'll have water. And, we'll do that until we get, a second discussion or whatever. And it lasted a week, and it was horrible. So
I feel bad.
Yeah, but... Again, there's not that much, spiritual experience that can be had when you're not teaching. We did do a lot of studying, and I did have a companion that really liked to hear about space doctrine. And that was really
Wait. Space doctrine?
Yeah, you're going to have to define that.
Space doctrine is... Book of Abraham, Nibley-esque Temple and Cosmos kind of stuff.
Oh,
So she was Italian, and they hadn't translated Temple and Cosmos into Italian. So she really wanted to hear about that stuff because she was fascinated with the Book of Abraham. So I read it and translated it to her, and we talked about it a lot, and it was fun.
Gosh. Yeah, if you haven't had a nosebleed in a while, I would recommend the book, The Kolob Theorem. I can't even remember who
I've
wrote
heard about that, and I don't know that I want to read it because I'm not.
It's horrendous. I actually feel like that's one of the few things that is an accomplishment for me as a person. Some people run marathons and say, I did one of my lifetime goals as a bucket list. I got through that book start to finish.
Very nice.
And good Lord Almighty. That's a rough book.
I want to do that. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I've heard about it, and I was intrigued for a minute, but then didn't really want to read it. So,
no, it's so mind-bendingly bullshit. There's just no stop to it. Yeah, it's like I said, nosebleed after nosebleed after nosebleed. It's a rough one.
So, well, if you want to believe that kind of stuff, you really have to turn yourself into knots to try to make it work.
Oh, major knots, though. I mean,
it's not even knots. It's just drawing lines. I mean, you're just deciding, like, I'm going to connect these dots now.
Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of dots you can connect in all kinds of different methods, and it seems like everybody has tried.
Right.
So that's what I did with my companion. We talked to each other about the craziest space doctrine we could think about.
Wow. Okay, so towards the end of the essay, Laura, I got to ask you, you'd mentioned that you'd taken, was your husband your boyfriend, your fiance at the time, to a concert?
Did I say that? I can't remember.
To a Howard Jones.
It was the first kiss.
Yeah.
First kiss.
Okay, yeah. Our first kiss was at the Howard Jones concert.
Okay, so I mentioned to Jake the last time you dropped off that I said that I was like, oh my gosh, Howard Jones! I haven't even heard that name for a long, long time.
Oh,
and I loved Howard Jones back in like middle school or grade school or whatever. And then I even had a couple of his albums or whatever. And then when I realized that I was heterosexual instead of homosexual, I had to get rid of the albums.
No, you can keep those. You can keep those.
All right.
Yeah. So he came to Sundance a couple times when I was in college, and I went before my mission to Sundance to his concert. And then when I got home and met my husband and all that, he took me to the Howard Jones concert on our third date.
Your husband liked him too.
Well, he knew that I liked Howard Jones, and I had told him about this concert, and his friends were in this other group that was actually opening for Howard Jones. It's called Moon Pools and Caterpillars. And so I think his idea was, well, I'll go for the Moon Pools and Caterpillars, but, also Laura likes Howard Jones. I don't know. But
Moon Pools and Caterpillars definitely sounds like a children's band.
No, they were like this Pacific Islander band from California, but my husband just happened to know, I think, some of their relatives in Salt Lake. And one of my companions also had been like stage manager or something for them before the mission. So it was an interesting confluence of a lot of different things right there. But yeah, Moon Pools and Caterpillars. But anyway, our 15th anniversary was last year, and strangely enough, Howard Jones came through town the month before our anniversary. So my husband got his tickets for that. It was awesome.
Oh, boy.
Bet you're doing a lot more than kissing after that concert.
It was a fun concert. 15 years though, right?
That is actually, congratulations.
See, that's another
Howard Jones chose just the right times to to be there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been the same if it was like the 11th anniversary, right?
Yeah.
It just had to be the 15th.
Right. Yes. Because things in integers at 5.
Numerology.
Yeah,
it's huge, right?
I can barely remember some of his songs. Wasn't one of his songs like to get to know you well?
Yes, that was like his most popular one, I think.
Okay, there's a few others. I can actually
Everlasting Love. That was one of my favorites.
Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah. Plus, that one was all about the temple, right? Because it was like Egyptian on the video, and it's like everlasting
he
love.
Really was. He really did play to a Mormon audience. He was so squeaky clean, and
yeah.
Wait, that totally. And the Carpenters. That
was way before Howard Jones.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of groups that appeal to Mormons. My mom sent us this. My wife and I, while we were still dating, she sent us this video of this Carpenter song. It's, about I don't even remember what the title is, like Everlasting Love. I just ripped that off of what you said. But anyway, it was something like that. But in the video, they have the girls are in these white dresses that go down to the ankles, down to the wrists, and then up to the up all the way up their necks. So it's like this close to a burqa, and it's but my mom was like, I just like how chaste they are.
But didn't they wear that kind of stuff on the Brady Bunch too?
Yeah. So I don't know, whatever. I like.
Well, see, I went from Howard Jones, Depeche Mode, and Underworld, and I shifted right into like hard heavy metal.
Oh no!
Of course, we're talking late '80s hair heavy metal. So like the Metallica and the Def Leppard and the White Snake.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
I think I was overcompensating. I think that's what I was doing.
Overcompensate for the Howard Jones, because I gotta say, when you look at those,
that's a pretty hard shift. That's going from 50 miles an hour into reverse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a pretty shift in genre.
Well, in genre, but like if you look at the music videos of 80s hair metal bands, it's still pretty gay. Still pretty gay. They're wearing but only vests, long hair, and they're just like
lots of lipstick.
Right, exactly.
They wore more makeup than The Cure.
Yeah.
And The Cure wore a lot of makeup.
That's true. That's true.
Howard Jones was a really good concert for my husband and I. But it was right after that. Well, maybe not right after that the experience happened with him saying exactly what Gordon B. Hinckley said.
You may not think seriously about it now, but the time will come when you will fall in love. It will occupy all of your thoughts and be the stuff of which your dreams are made.
So,
right.
Coming from, I love Howard Jones. I had that conference experience. My husband is awesome, and I knew he was awesome. And then him saying exactly what I heard, the prophet say. Obviously, he was the right choice.
Yeah, the heavens parted for you. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and, the heavens really parted for me because my husband, I still think he is amazing. So I was really lucky in this whole thing. It could have been some other guy who said that to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's perfect, even though he wasn't. I just happened to get the perfect guy for me.
Yeah, you're right. You could have gotten some, domestic abuser or something like that.
Yeah. Right? And I dated some weird guys right when I got home from my mission, and any one of them would have been a terrible choice.
But, if they went to that thing, if they went to that conference, there's a pretty good probability that they could have memorized that particular line. So,
right? But how would they have known that I translated that line? How would they have known?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And especially if they liked Howard Jones at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly.
Very unlikely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, you seem like a very lucky person.
I am. I'm very lucky. I agree. So I also wanted to say really quick that when I actually wrote this essay, I wasn't even thinking most of the stuff that we've talked about.
Really?
Well, what were you thinking then? Now,
when I wrote the essay, it was right before the last conference when ordained women was going to be walking to the priesthood session, and so it was me thinking kind of aloud how my experience was so different from what they were experiencing. I never asked, I just went. And so the whole thing didn't make any sense to me why anybody would even care if they showed up. Wow. Because why does it matter? Really, why does it even matter? We all know that those women don't have the priesthood as defined by the church. Everybody knows that. So why does it matter whether or not they want to come in? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean,
so why make a big deal out of it? And that was the whole point of my what I was thinking when I wrote this was it doesn't matter. I got an answer that turned out really good for me somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be. So why does it matter if they go someplace that we are saying they're not supposed to be? Because, if you're going to get an answer and you're looking for an answer, it doesn't matter where you are, right? You get it where you get it, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, that's why I think that the whole gender distinction about attending priesthood session is so ridiculous anyway, because it's just like, it's just so arbitrary, and it fetishizes the priesthood and the gender difference. It's just weird. I don't even understand why it's there.
Well, yeah. So many conversations have gone down about this where if the church would have just let them in, it would have diffused so many things. I mean, it wouldn't have solved the problem.
Right.
But it could have diffused at least the ugliness and a lot of the bitterness that kind of rose up from it.
Right.
Right. And, in the intervening time since I wrote that up till now, a lot of things have happened. And I still, I support what they're doing, whatever. I'm not a part of the church anymore. So really, I have no dog in the fight. It doesn't really matter to me whether or not they go in. But still, I think that...
Do you think that in your believing days that you would have been a supporter of the movement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would have been. Maybe not necessarily... Well, okay, I wouldn't be one of the TBM types that was saying, well, they shouldn't be there. Because I always had the question in the temple, where, Adam is told, what is he told? I'm trying to remember how the ceremony goes. Well, anyway, Eve is told that she needs to hearken to her husband, Adam. And Adam is given the direct line to God, and Eve has to go through Adam. That never made any sense to me. Because, in the scriptures, it says you're supposed to go to God with your questions. And it doesn't necessarily say anywhere in there that if you have a question, you're supposed to go to your husband to get the answer. So that... Oh,
yeah. You're right. Yeah, in the scriptures, it doesn't say, hearken unto your husband while he hearkens to the Lord.
Right. It doesn't say that anywhere. And it always seemed to me that Eve was... Okay, sorry again.
It's all right. We I don't know where you were. I don't remember exactly where you were in what you were saying.
I was just saying that it seems like women are punished far harsher for Eve's transgression than men are punished for Adam's. That rule of faith does not apply to women at all. So where does that leave women, really? It leaves them nowhere. So really, Mormonism is not a religion for women, and a lot of women don't recognize that, and I think I recognized it a lot earlier than some. So, yeah.
Well, that's great.
But that's what I was thinking when I wrote it. But, obviously, in the intervening time, you reframe everything, right? Even that essay I've reframed as to what it means.
Well, now we come full circle with the meta is because, that's what the essay is all about, is reframe. Well, that's what I thought it was all about, is reframing those experiences that you have when you lose the construct that made those experiences meaningful in the first place.
Right, exactly.
So, well, this is awesome. We came full circle. Tom, you there?
Yay.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here. Yeah, this has been really great. I mean, I know we're kind of running up against it, but really appreciate you taking the time, Laura.
Hey,
it was awesome to catch up again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Thanks so much for listening to my essay.
Absolutely. Sorry it took so long for us to get back to you about it. We kind of have a backlog, and we're not very good about chipping away at it. But
no, that's okay. As you said, I've reframed it, and so we might have had a completely different conversation. 4 months ago?
Right.
So
exactly.
And then we can talk about it again in another 4 months.
Right.
It'll be different again.
Exactly. It'll just keep going on and on. Every 4 months, we'll just every time Howard Jones comes to town.
Yep.
And then we'll have this conversation again.
He's getting really old, so I don't know. Actually, he's not that old. He could come again.
Oh.
I don't know.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah. Talk to you later, Laura.
Bye.
All right. Thanks again to Laura for her wonderful essay and stimulating conversation. And there's something else. Oh, right. There's a new listener feedback survey on our website. So if you go to our website, infantsonthrones.com, there's a link to the new survey, and you can give us feedback about the podcast, what you like, what you don't like, and help us improve it, make it better for you. All right. Thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew. Ryan.
Carol.
Keith.
Ashley. And I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.